Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had an opportunity to grab a coffee and do some networking and that you are refreshed for our next panel discussion, which will focus on the European renminbi hubs, also known as offshore centers, or where renminbi is traded, where renminbi is used to invest in a sort of two-way flow between China and Europe. And allow me to introduce first up our very qualified expert speakers we have invited for this panel. I'm delighted to have to my left Rongrong from HSBC in London. You are the head of renminbi business and very much the go-to person. If anyone wants to know across Europe or Middle East or Africa about HSBC's strategy in terms of the renminbi, they will come to your doorstep. So not just people from within Europe, but way beyond. To my far right, from Paris, Poignant, China advisor to Paris Europlace. You look back on a long career in banking, as such have developed rich insight also in doing business with China, French companies doing business with China, so much so that you have been chosen as senior advisor for the Bank of China, Paris branch. So they tap into your rich knowledge, which hopefully will be useful for this panel. You're probably the next best thing to having someone from the Bank of China here on the panel. Kind of. Kind of Chinese. To my right, Lutz Raettig, chairman of the Supervisory Board, Morgan Stanley in Frankfurt. You're serving in various functions on boards, for example, Frankfurt Stock Exchange, Association of German Banks, Advisory Board of Clearstream also, very importantly. And you're known a little bit in Frankfurt as Mr. Finanzplatz, which plays, of course, to the importance of Frankfurt as being the financial platform in Germany for German companies. And you're involved in so many projects that bring together banks, that bring together companies, and of course also political stakeholders between Germany and China. And then to my left, again, a player for the local team, Didier Mouget from PwC in Luxembourg. You're providing strategic advice specifically for international financial services companies who look to deploy their operations from Luxembourg as a gateway through Europe and beyond. And you're also advising the government here in Luxembourg in terms of an international RMB strategy and activities here on the ground. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for making time to be here with us. Let's first, we have a lot of material already from the first panel in terms of outlook, China's growth and the issue of capital controls and the need for a certain degree of liberalization, letting go of control. But let's first of all look at how Europe can assist, which also came up during this morning. If I may ask you, Jean-Jean, first of all, what does make the European renminbi hubs different from the Asian ones? Because, of course, Hong Kong, Singapore, and also to an extent Taiwan are well ahead of the game.
Well, thank you, Judith. Can I just take the liberty on behalf of all of us and thank you for Luxembourg for finance, for really bringing all of us together across regions, across different industries, and to really discuss something significant. I know we're halfway through, but I think we all agree that Nicholas have done a fantastic job, and we're so privileged to have the royal presence be with us today. I hope, just out of all the respect, I can just put this out. Now, can I just come back to your question? Now, we talk about a currency that's going global. Before 2009, nobody heard anything about it. I think it's only fair to recognize that currency going global does not only mean currency stay within Asia. So Asia progression and development is very natural and is very, very strategic. But Europe is also the natural progression to the next phase. And if you look at the currency going global, it's not a big bang. We're trying to open up and then the next day people can feel the liberty. It's actually a staged process. So certainly within our organization, that the way we look at it is a staged process. So the first stage is looking at renminbi as a trade currency. And the second stage, moving beyond, is to see renminbi as an investment currency. And ultimately, if everything goes well, as a reserve currency, I mean a reserve currency, not the reserve currency, is one of the natural outcomes. So Asia is definitely playing a key role on the trade side as well as investment. But Europe, from the time zone perspective, have an infrastructure perspective, from a financial innovation perspective. And then we have a pool of global investors. We have a very sophisticated platform. And I think Europe has so much to offer. And that's why I'm very honored again to have experts across different centers to show that there's definitely space of more than a few centers coming forward.
Thank you so much, Lutz. Would you like to jump in on that and maybe comment from the German perspective how vital it is not just to have Frankfurt, but dotted around the Eurozone, different centers with different specializations?
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. I think one of the very simple basic rules of not only banking but services is be close to your client. And if you want to be close to your client, you really have to be there and not under remote control. I think this is particularly true with regard to a place like Frankfurt. We are a logistical hub, and we are a hub for the real economy significantly more than only for the financial services industry, including insurance in this respect. So the infrastructure has to be such that we can serve our clients, that we can serve the needs of their clients in order to get into a two-way street. And this is specifically German. In the German case, you have huge companies like Volkswagen, BASF, who are very active in China in two ways, direct investment and trade. But you have 99% of the companies in Germany are medium-sized and smaller. Most of them are family-owned. And they are the ones who need services, who need infrastructures that are ready to go for them. And this is, I think, our main task. And if you look at a city like Frankfurt, we have all the banks there. As the Americans, we don't like to be too close to politics, so we would never set up in Berlin. I think we have an infrastructure that starts with an airport that is big and provides many connections. All big highways meet in Frankfurt. Frankfurt is the geographical center, by the way, of Europe. So it's very nicely positioned, which is not only the merit of what we all do, but we inherited something of this. And I think the main thing is to connect the client, the intermediary, and those who provide the infrastructure, be it on the IT side, be it on providing liquidity, which I think is a very important aspect of everything we talk about here. We have the ECB here. In fact, we have even two central banks in Frankfurt, which is pretty rare these days. And we have a lot of regulators, so you can assume that there's a lot of know-how assembled which can write the rules in a sensible way for whatever is needed as services or as infrastructure.
Could you reflect, Bernard, from the French perspective, building on what we just heard from Lutz regarding the perspective from Frankfurt, because of course there's also a rich trade flow coming from France and also vice versa, and French companies have been among the most active, for example, in launching renminbi-denominated bonds.
So thank you. I would like also to thank the Minister of Finance of Luxembourg for giving this opportunity for Paris Europlace to speak about your neighbor next door and what he is doing next door. And I'm going to share immediately some of the conclusion of my German colleague, because we, from the start of the opening of the internationalization of the renminbi, Paris Europlace, and I have to say Paris Europlace regroup all the stakeholders of financial center. And it's not a surprise that the chairman of Paris Europlace is the chairman of GDF Gaz de France. So the goal and the objective of Paris Europlace is to service the real economy. So the internationalization of the renminbi gave an obvious advantage for the company, the corporates, which understand that using in their transaction with China the renminbi open new avenue of negotiation. They can be more effective in their cost proposal. So that's what the objective of Paris Europlace 2 years ago, and it was well advertised in the forum organized in Hong Kong in November 2012. That was the objective, is to increase the percentage of the trades, commercial trades, with China in renminbi. Today, according to SWIFT statistic, we should have, and I'm cautious, but at least that's what I've read, 20% of our transaction denominated in renminbi. So that's, I think, one aspect of our strategy or objective. It's still very limited to large corporates, and as my colleague said, we need to go more in depth with a medium-sized company. When you have I have an example, a medium-sized company in Avignon, 500 million euro of turnover, present in China for the past 6 or 7 years. The CFO had not a clue that he could use the renminbi in Paris, made transaction in renminbi in Paris or with his bank. Obviously, the branch of his bank, French bank, in Avignon, could not speak about the renminbi. So there is a big effort to make this network of companies active in China, not only the big one, but the small and medium-sized one, to understand what is their advantage in settle their transaction in renminbi. That's what we try to do and to convince to do the French bank, but also, I have to say, HSBC with its network is very efficient, and I have to say that. But being the advisor of Bank of China, and
we're all friends here.
I can say that Bank of China has been also very efficient, and that's normal. And if they have not been, that would be, I would advise to fire the chairman, the manager in Paris. But I think there is a lot of work still to do, and to work together. I think because we have with Paris Europlace, we have a working group in which HSBC is present among other banks, and we try to develop this aspect. Now there is a second aspect which is very much put forward by banks, financial institutions, especially in the UK, is the CNH bond market. Alors, here again, I have a very personal view about this market. This market is has been driven by speculation. Investors were waiting to have a foreign tax increase, and in addition, they have interest rate. Any investors who has invested in assets denominated in renminbi during the past 4 years, thanks to this reevaluation of the renminbi, should have 7% return a year. So that's an important driver, but is it a good driver for the future? And today, you may have read in the Financial Times that the PwC is decreasing the level of foreign exchange against euro, against dollar of the renminbi, in order to stop a speculation which, according to, again, Deutsche Bank, represent a global amount of $500 billion of investment waiting for a revaluation of the renminbi. So that's not exactly what the PBOC wants. Now, last but not least, regarding the CNH bond market and the French corporates. The CNH bond market is a market for Chinese and Asian issuers. That represent globally, since the opening of this market, 70% of all the issues made by issuers. Europe represents around 10%. And among Europe, you have two countries, Germany and France, who are the leaders in terms of number of issues denominated in CNH. There is a slight difference between our two countries, not now, but we have a number of issues by different issuers, corporates, who wants to use this market to finance their investment in China. And that's very, very important to have this motivation. The French corporates, the German corporates are using this market to develop their activity in China. But one day, what they are waiting, at least what the French corporates are telling us, okay, CNH is nice, but the real target is one day to use the domestic CNY market, because that's where the bulk of the investors are, and that's where they believe to support their development in China, they need to have true Chinese investor. Mm-hmm. Well, there is other comment.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Would you like, Didier, would you like to build on that now, bringing in the Luxembourg perspective? We already had a good flavor here of what is driving the investment from the real economy, where the needs are, but of course there's a two-way flow, as was just alluded to.
Yes, I'll try to be short. I can only agree with the comments that were made. First of all, one remark, the internationalization of the RMB is a process that has started recently, but that is accelerating extremely rapidly, and there is no way out of that. And Europe is going to play a huge role. It is, as Rongrong mentioned, the second stage. Europe is also much more open to this process than the US today.
Very interesting.
And for various reasons, Europe will play in the coming years a huge role in this process. Now, moving to the role of the different European countries, because Europe is what it is. It is 27 countries, a federation of 27 countries. And I don't think that there is really a competition between the countries for that. But as I think Lutz mentioned, ultimately the clients will decide. The market forces will play. And Luxembourg is today the largest financial center in many different fields. In Europe, it is the financial center in Europe for asset management, for private wealth management, and a number of other activities. And Luxembourg does not intend to become a big industrialized country such as Germany and France. But there are complementarities between the large industrial countries. The main example of that is the strong presence of the German banks here, the strong presence of the French banks here. And that is what the market is telling us. It is that the European countries are going to specialize. And of course, in the trading field, that's a specialty of the large countries. And Luxembourg intends to play a significant role based on its existing strengths. It is, as I said, the leading territory in the asset management and asset management services field. It is also a very large banking center in Europe. And there we can quote the presence of the top three Chinese banks who have set up their European headquarters in Luxembourg. And so Luxembourg has as a strategy to position itself not in competition but in complementarity with the other large European countries. And because it is, apart from the UK, who is, of course, from a capital markets and Forex viewpoint, a huge country, Luxembourg is probably today the largest financial services center. That's where it intends to capitalize upon.
What has been a really big issue in the last few months, and that went through international papers and was widely discussed and documented how important it is, but it's there's certain more other opportunities to use it, is the RQ fee quota, the foreign investor. You know a lot about that, of course, Rongrong. And yet, while it was widely publicized that London is was the first European location to be granted such a quota, the question is, how is it being used? When is it going to be used? And will it be expanded? Will other European locations also receive one? Because very interestingly, Luxembourg, through its UCIT brand, is already able to make use of foreign quotas in other locations, such as Hong Kong. Maybe you can reflect on that.
Please. Thank you. And maybe I just I'll try to draw some connections based on these three other experts saying. The one comment is about the market trend. Bernard has very kindly, give us the very comprehensive overview on the CNH market. And we talk about how we need to do for our underlying clients, which in this game, we got corporate clients, financial institutions, and private banking clients. And some of the locations goes to even lower tier, which is the retail clients. But if we can see that ultimately the onshore markets, which is the China mainland, and everywhere else, which called offshore markets, will converge. Now, we can debate about how the timeline will work, but the trend is definitely going that way. And if you look at from FX curves, some of the yield curve perspective, and as China continue to internationalize or liberalizing based on its measures of reform success, we will see these two markets becoming more, and ultimately the harmony will happen. So this is very important to just to put that out, out of the way. In terms of what we can do as per center or per region for our clients, and then Judith talked about the RQ fee scheme. Now, if you think about London, the RQ fee scheme doesn't arrive in London naturally, right? And I think it's important to hear this morning the Minister of Finance has very kindly, outlined the directions of what Luxembourg wants to do, which we feel is extremely encouraging. Because what we want to do is having a scheme that allows institutional investors to tap into China's onshore market without any constraints. Now, so far, as we all appreciate, if you are financial institutional clients, the only way for you to invest into onshore markets has to go via one of the schemes, which is only three so far. One is the Q fee, and one is the RQ fee, and the other is the CIBM, China Interbank Bond Market. The RQ fee stands out because it offers investors the flexibility in terms of asset allocation. So London, in a way, is very fortunate to have that luxury so far, because the investors, if they are fixed income driven, they no longer feel they have to restrict how much they put into equity, for example. And it allows some very flexible way to repatriate their funds. So in a way, in terms of Didier talk about what Luxembourg stands out in terms of the investment hub. It's so important to do that for their underlying clients, so that we hope very, very soon we will have RQ fee in Luxembourg.
Absolutely. Do we know already how London is using this foreign quota?
Yeah, HSBC is not marketing, sorry, but we have it is. But you have to forgive me for the time being. But we have assisted the first ever, big asset manager to get that quota, get the license. And I think the way that make us stands out is that you really have to share and educate the clients in terms of the whole process. And then the ability to provide a holistic, full package solution is very important. Because the clients are so busy, they can't say, okay, I need a bit custody, I need a bit FX. By the way, I deal with 3 players. No, they want whole package. They want to be hand-holding, and they want to be sure that you have people on the ground, speaks the language, and understand the regulators. And I think in a way, next year, HSBC will be celebrating 150 years anniversary. So China is not a new business for us.
I still do wonder, though, how London is going about using their quota, because I felt in my preparation drawn to always look at Singapore, what's been happening there on the back of what's been happening in Hong Kong being, of course, the first platform, and other locations in Asia coming afterwards. And Singapore got granted a quota in October, 80 billion, and they're already ready to take license applications. So I wonder how quickly European platforms can come up with the similar procedure.
The clients so far across London are, in terms of the understanding about how open they are, I think it's fair to say it's a bit varied, not the same. So you have a small percentage of clients are very much ahead of the game. Therefore, they come to us in terms of what we can do for them. And I think it's not just one bank, it's all the industry that need to engage with clients about this opening up and let them know what are options that are available for them right now. So we have a very clear work stream, and I have colleagues in the audience today, and they have a target list, etc. But not to go to details, it's really engage with clients and let them have a very informed strategic choice.
So I take the process is underway, and in a similar way, Luxembourg, while not having a quota yet, hopefully very soon, is doing its best and very successfully marketing what it has already at hand, which is, for example, the UCIT brand. Maybe you can elaborate on that, Didier.
Yes, this is a very good example of the complementarity between the different European countries. I mentioned Germany and France, but with the UK, certainly what will happen. You mentioned the difficulty for the UK asset managers to use these quota. No quota today has been given to any continental European countries, non-UK countries. That will happen one day. But what the UK managers are considering today, and we know that from research, are to use the quota they've been allocated to invest in China through Luxembourg investment funds, because again, that is one of the strengths of Luxembourg. It is its asset management sector, and a Hong Kong player is also doing that. So the whole of the different players in Europe is going to be organized and to be organized in an efficient way. That is again the market forces will drive us like that.
If I may bring in you, Lutz, again, what is your perspective right now? What is needed from German players that are interested in renminbi products? We know that the big companies, just like the French companies, have become comfortable with dim sum funds. They're not just raising renminbi-denominated bonds to invest in China, but to also finance operation company-wide. But there seems to be, from my perspective, a shift. It's not just the big players coming into the market, but also medium and smaller sized companies. Is that true?
This is definitely true. If you follow the last 12 to 18 months, you have been seeing the relatively rapid development of a direct investment program of China into Germany. And the companies available are not the BASF or Volkswagens or Bayers, but these are medium-sized, mostly family-owned companies. One famous example is Putzmeister. Putzmeister is a world market leader in shooting concrete through pipes on building sites. They have, I think, 95% of the world market. The situation there was quite simple. It was family-owned, no successor, and the challenge to the company to do the next step in investing in developing a market position in the Chinese market. And they kind of decided for themselves that they would be too small and not financially powerful enough to do this, apart from management and so on. So what they did is they were looking for a Chinese partner who in turn was interested in instantly buying a world market position in a certain product and the technology. This is And ultimately, the marriage happened. 100% of Putzmeister was sold to a Chinese company, and the Chinese company was happy with the big international market share and was as happy to have the technology to more successfully develop the domestic market. And I think this is a situation which you can see in umpteen different situations, particularly in this field. We had another one, forklifts. Forklift is an oligopolistic market. One of the big suppliers is a German company. They were looking for firming up their Chinese market position, particularly in order to develop it further, and took on a 26% Chinese shareholder representation on the board and so on. So, but all of this would not have happened if there wouldn't be confidence in their own capability to judge what they are doing, to the capability and the trust into the people they are concluding a contract with, and this contract is not a short-term thing, sale of something and then you turn around, but it's a long-term project, which is a joint project. What do you also need with regard to currency is that you have trust in the currency as a vehicle, as well as a means to finance and ultimately maybe even get new equity owners or more equity owners. So I think this is a nice example of where the market tends to go in a way. That's what we like to tell our politicians also, is that this is a real deal for the real economy and has nothing to do with speculation.
Which is, of course, an important issue that was raised earlier this morning, that especially controlled liberalization, slow steps in terms of letting go of capital controls might help to tackle that problem that was raised by Bertrand earlier about the hot money flows. Bertrand, if I may come, excuse me, Bernard, if I may come back to you and reflect on what the next big step could be for European hubs. It has been alluded that a clearinghouse, or maybe more than one, or even three would be advisable, would be the next step. We know it's usually a high-profile Chinese bank that is chosen as a clearinghouse over in Asia. This could be also a next step for a European location, or several. What are your thoughts on that?
First, I would like just to make a small comment to your comment regarding investors. Again, I'm a capital market man, and when we do an issue and we lead manage an issue, we made a roadshow in Europe. More or less in the Eurozone, you have 15 large funds which can invest in renminbi, which represent around 15 billion euro globally. Most of them are registered in Luxembourg. Most of them, the decisions are made in London or in Paris or Frankfurt or Rome. There is an important Italian fund. So when we organize a roadshow, we bring the people not of Luxembourg, but of Italy, Germany, and so on. And that's why the notion of, and the money comes from Germany, Italy, France, and so on. That's why, speaking of Luxembourg, Luxembourg is first a place where you accumulate, you register this amount of money. But the decision-making process, the credit committee, which take a decision to take this risk or this risk, is not in Luxembourg. And for us, when we have a client, we have to see the decision, the guy who make a decision on the risk, on the maturity, and on the return on investment, and so on. So that's just a comment. The second comment is regarding, again, Europe. So far, as I said, is 3 years maturity. When I want to go 5 years, 10 years, 7 years, we do not go to Europe. That's more or less. But yes.
But things are changing. More issues are coming to the
By
market.
changing when? I'm sorry. I do not see when it is changing, because so far it's so much driven by the foreign exchange vision of those investors that I prefer to go to see a French, a Taiwanese insurance company which is delivering more and more insurance denominated in renminbi, who wants to have assets, who have liabilities in renminbi, they need assets in renminbi. That's the true type of investors which are the one looked at by those French corporates. I close this. Now, regarding the hub or the clearing.
Or several.
It's very technical. When you look and you go into what is being done by the Chinese bank, I'm not going to speak about Bank of China first, but ICBC in Singapore, Bank of China in Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. It's technical because you have a very basic problem, is how to create a bridge between the mainland and the outside, a bridge to make transfer. So you have the Chinese system, you have the international system, and so on. So you need to have people who speak Chinese, English, and if you go outside, let's say France or Germany and so on, in addition, they have to speak also, if possible, German or French. That's number one. Number two, if you want to be a hub or a clearing which is competitive as the three I've mentioned, you need to have not only the capacity to make this transfer, so that's more technicalities, but also the people who provide the service, who are there, if possible, during the working hours of your client. That means to continue to work when Hong Kong or China is closed, are closed. So that means you need to have a team or two teams present in this clearing organization. And many banks, at the first, when they start to think about it, said, okay, we did not speak about the swap, but so far we have now in Europe this liquidity umbrella provided by the European Central Bank. Some people said it came after London. Of course, we have 27 countries. London is alone. There is a pound sterling, which is nothing to compare in terms of size with the euro. So it takes a little more time in Europe than in the UK. Regarding the hub or the clearing, it's a bit the same. We have to think about technicalities that can be solved, but also about teams. I will take, sorry to say, the example of Chinese bank I know well, I will not mention, but for the past 2.5 years or 3 years, they have had the idea, that's an idea of the boss of this bank in Paris, to have two teams starting at 1 o'clock in the morning and finishing at 5 or 6 o'clock, depending on so they can trade when when Hong Kong and Beijing is open, and after they can continue. The problem is they are alone, more or less, in Paris, and I hope one day our friends, you have to do that. You have to have two teams in Paris in order to cope first with this idea of providing service during the daytime. And last but not least, you have also to provide, if you are a clearing bank, some services. The intraday liquidity has to be provided by someone. In Hong Kong, it's done by the clearing bank. In Singapore, the same. The clearer in Hong Kong, in Paris, Frankfurt, or London, or Luxembourg, and also, if he wants to be competitive, to provide this intraday liquidity. That means he needs to have money, access to liquidity. It's not that many banks, European bank, who can have access to liquidity 24 hours, during 24 hours. Mm-hmm. So, I will not, and last but not least, I agree with you, we have to have several clearing in Europe to cope with our clients. Yes. Because I do not see our clients in Avignon telling him, I'm sorry, we are going to clear your transaction in Frankfurt.
They will want
he will not understand.
They will want to go to a French.
It will be more natural to go to a clearing in Paris. And I believe it will be the same in Frankfurt.
Good point. But Rongrong, you wanted to answer to that.
I wonder if I just add a little bit more. I think it's not a secret that many of the key European countries are openly expressed the interest and the eagerness to look into this option. Let's put it in this way. Because having a clearing and settlement bank that representing the city itself and on behalf of Europe is actually a logical way to look into it, whatever direction or location that you start from. The question has always been a bit chicken and egg. So first we have to decide, what do we clear for? It sounds logical, but it sounds very simple, but it's actually quite hard because so far, apart from SWIFT data, they haven't got any sophisticated system that can give us a very comprehensive overview about the volume, the transactions, and also the trade flow, for example. SWIFT can only capture end-to-end. So if I'm doing the triangle trade, I may not be able to, the system may not be able to capture. So that, so far, it's very difficult to justify, there's an urgent need to have that system in place, right? So that's the one reality. And the other thing is about, we all heard China is building this, very sophisticated China interbank payment system known as CIPS. And people has been longing for it. Apparently, it could be early as, half year, H1 this year. So, countries that are preparing this investment from an infrastructure perspective, they will ask a question like, okay, so if I do something now, of course, depends on the model, would my model be compatible to the China's CIPS system? If not, what impact do I have? And bear in mind, they are not cheap, right? So it depends on the simple model, which is like a book transfer, or you go for the Hong Kong model, which is actually building renminbi on the existing platform, which is the RTGS system. So one have to think about clearing and settlement. And I think Bernard talked about one very, very key point is the liquidity provider. So Hong Kong extended their time. Yes, I think they work a bit long hours to capture the demand from the Europe and indeed other regions. But could this be sustainable? One have to ask that question also. So I think, you could argue there are more than one center needed, because if you look at Asia, Hong Kong got a clearing, Taiwan got a clearing, Singapore got a clearing, Macau got a clearing, Malaysia also have a clearing. So you could say, gosh, do I need so many just in Asia? So therefore, I think we look into it together and individually is absolutely the right way to do, but also have to engage with China and to understand how their progression and their system building will impact on us all. It's not just one center. Thank
Absolutely. You were just mentioning, you want to jump in here?
Maybe one addition, which I think is quite important in the clearing and settlement side. I think we have to distinguish between the front to the client and the operation that is processing the whole thing. And whereas the face to the client has to be as close to the client as possible, the factory has to be wherever, and it has to fulfill a couple of requirements. One is operational safety, one is scalability, one is all the means of transparency. You were alluding to it with SWIFT. We do not have enough evidence in various product fields to really be sure how the impact on flows of money are and so on. And of course we have to have a provider of liquidity, at least a provider of last resort, which has to be a central bank normally, unless we can create liquidity on our own via netting and so on, which is an important point. Now, we're sitting here also being hosted by Clearstream, and I'm sure they can tell you all the dynamics about a worldwide clearing and settlement system. I think ultimately cost efficiency to the client will require that on that side we are uniting and that we are at the same time decentralizing vis-à-vis the client.
Some of these issues will be more discussed in depth this afternoon in terms of maximizing liquidity. That will certainly come up this afternoon. I should throw in here as well that in the last few weeks only, very brand new, the Shanghai Free Trade Zone was literally, they kicked off their action with launches of cross-border renminbi two-way cash pooling, which allows corporations on the ground to use their renminbi liquidity much more efficiently. It does away with a lot of costs. This was actually mentioned, Didier, this morning as one of the cases to watch for Luxembourg in terms of what can be used or suggested as innovation. I know PricewaterhouseCoopers today launches a brilliant report, if I may say, so a comparative study of cross-border renminbi centers, not just in Europe, but also in Asia, a very fair study, if I may say, so with great data, which we all rely on so much. So if you could just reflect on where you see the opportunities from the Luxembourg perspective right now, based on this report and the conclusions you've drawn.
Yes, just one word about the designation of offshore RMB center. This is a political decision by the PwC, and if I try to put myself into the shoes of the Chinese authorities, it's a very difficult decision to make, because they would like to please France, they would like to please Germany, they would like to please many other countries, and Europe is complex and nobody wants to frustrate anybody. And we had, of course, those reflections when working on the project for now almost 2 years, how to get to that result. And finally, again, the market is giving the answer, because if you go through the figures of that survey, and I'm not going to comment in details, I won't give any figures about it, you'll have that in the pack later. But you can clearly see that the answer comes from the market, that the volume of transactions in all dimensions is increasing. So the question remains open. Of course, Luxembourg, as many other places, has state-of-the-art infrastructure, technology, and so on. And it would be nice to have that status, but it's no longer considered as a must in Luxembourg, because, again, the business is giving the answer before the political move that could come at one point in time. Now, if I have to give a few thoughts about the opportunity for Luxembourg, I think it's really this role of hub, of gateway, of facilitator for the development of the RMB in Europe. You mentioned, Lutz, 2 examples of German companies. At least one of them, I'm not sure about the second one, but one of them was done making use of Luxembourg structuring expertise, financing and investment vehicles. And that is the role Luxembourg intends to play. It does not intend to become a second London or to compete with Frankfurt or Paris in the industrial sector. But it has clearly a role to play as a financial services place to facilitate that process. Of course, the establishment of the Chinese banks here facilitate that, but I think that ultimately and even very soon, the complementarities, the market forces will play, and the German players, the French players, all the other players are more and more going to use Luxembourg as a way to facilitate this internationalization process.
And one of the aspects we haven't quite talked about that much, yes, but it came up, was Chinese outbound investment. Rongrong, maybe you could reflect on that. It's going to be, it already has started, as we've seen in various examples, but it's going to be huge going forward and key also for the European hubs, for example, as Luxembourg.
And maybe I just drop, because we talk a little bit on the Shanghai Free Trade Zone. I just thought it's interesting just to drop a little story, not story actually. For those who can read Chinese, will look at the development paper of Shanghai Free Trade Zone, would read the title very differently, I think. It's called China National Free Trade Zone, bracket, Shanghai. Very different. What it means is that, you know, Shanghai is used as the piloting first entry, but really is strongly backed up by the whole national government, and indeed are intended to roll out, you know, as the progress develops. So, I mean, the currency sounds like a big thing going global, but really it's a facilitator for trade and investment. You talk about the China outbound, and personally I feel very passionate about. And why is that? Because I think the made in China concept is definitely shifting from bought by China. And I think Bernard will be pleased to know that, you know, if you look at the Louis Vuitton shop, you know, down the Champs-Élysées, you look at the queue. Few years ago, it was maybe, you know, some Asian faces. You say, you're from Japan, you're from Korea. Now you said, I'm from China, I'm from mainland, I have a suitcase. And people say, come on the queue, you know, you can get what you want. And you go there, you pick and choose a few, and without have to worry too much, for example. But this is just a little hint to show that, you know, the consumption, you know, the desire to go out at multi-different levels, whether it's a sovereign money, state-owned corporate, private corporate, and indeed individual, are definitely coming out. And it is predicted China as the net global investor by 2017, and overtaking Japan in that position. So I think, you know, this is definitely going to be ongoing. And I pass the, maybe the microphone to Bernard.
Are we ready for that?
Talk about the sales
Speaking
in Louis
about
Vuitton.
the Chinese customers on the Champs-Élysées, you have to add that more and more they can use credit card in renminbi. And that's very important.
Absolutely.
Regarding again, the Shanghai Free Zone, but I have a little also experience because after our forum in Beijing last November, at the end of November, I went to Shanghai to pay a visit to PwC Shanghai, obviously to speak about this issue. And they said to me, we are working hard to provide very soon a list of how to work in this Shanghai Free Zone. But he said to me, we would like, we have a strong argument with PwC Beijing, because PwC Beijing does not want all what PwC Shanghai would like to have in order to develop Shanghai. They are much more cautious in Beijing than in Shanghai, which is normal. But when I read what is the outcome of what is published, I'm very fascinated by one sentence of this new zone.
If you speak into the microphone, that's
for
great.
banks, the borrowed funds can only be used inside the FTZ and to serve the real economy. In other words, you can borrow freely abroad and bring the money in the Shanghai Free Zone. To invest, it has to be for more than 1 year. And it's very specifically to develop activities in this zone. And there is a lot of control also. So I see through my reading the big difference between what the guy in front of me wanted and what the PBOC in Beijing. In other words, this liberalization of the renminbi will take time. They want to have concrete experience. They want to analyze the results. It's very Chinese. And they progress. but each time they want to have a clue, not more a clue, a demonstration, if it's good or bad. So the free zone is a test case.
And I'm just wondering that I think if you look at the comparison between Brazil and China, it's very interesting to show that China does learn. It learns from licenses, you know, across the world. It learns licenses across Asia. It will not go for example, Brazil, open the gate and the building rules around it. And China wants a little bit like a digestion, you know. Let's eat a little bit and eat a little bit more and see how it goes. And that's why we see the, we think about food all the time, but it's a culture. As Martin said, you know, it's very important. But what I'm really trying to say is that, you know, we learn from licenses, we'll go step by step. Shanghai Free Trade Zone is an example to show piloting, and that's why the staged process would allow the currency to play more role to facilitate trade and investment. And investment is absolutely key.
On that note, I think we bring in the audience for another interactive question. And that actually reflects very much on how China, the Chinese currency, is going to develop over the next few years. Because you may know that the IMF will review the composition of the basket of currencies it uses to define the special drawing rights. And that's about as close as you get to being defined as a reserve currency. So I hope we bring up the question very quickly, where you can answer for yourself if you think, or when you think, the renminbi will be added. There we are. When do you think the renminbi will be added alongside the dollar, the euro, the pound sterling, and the yen? Next year, during the next review, or the next review will be 2020, or maybe never. Whatever your opinion is, please make your choice now. What is the opinion of the panel? What do you think, Didier? When do they have a chance to get in, given the large volume of trade that we have globally?
I'll wait until everybody has decided before giving my views, but but there might be surprises.
Not next year.
Not this year. Okay, French honesty has to be honored. What is your vote? Not next year, but maybe in 2020.
I think the timeline matters here.
Okay, very good diplomatic answer. Perfect.
I would take some risk, and I would say that I wouldn't be so surprised to see this happening in 2015.
Okay, you're sticking your neck out there. Excellent. Thank you so much, Didier Mouget, Rongrong, Bernard Poignant, and Lutz Raettig, for your excellent comments. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.